Hello and welcome to the Doof Book Club, our monthly live stream discussion of a book chosen by you, our listeners. Hello and welcome.
Scott. Scott, cancel it. Scott,
I'm sorry.
close it down.
Yeah.
He wasn't supposed to be on yet.
Oh gosh.
Ignore him. He's not real. He's not real. I'm real. I'm real. I'm the real one. Hi, everyone. Hello. Welcome to the Doof Book Club, our monthly live stream discussion of a book chosen by you, our listeners. My name is Matt Freeman, and joining me, as always, is the 23rd copy of Scott Daly. Scott, how you doing?
Wait, what?
I mean,
Oh,
what's
God.
up, man?
Oh God. Am I me? Who am I?
You're Scott.
Don't worry. You can just rewrite my brain
Yeah.
to make me fine with this.
I'll just erase the part of you that
Yeah.
heard me there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. Love it. Hey everybody, how's it going? I hope you enjoyed Scary Matt. I kind of screwed it up, Matt, and you were on there 2 times. Do you want to see Scary Matt again? I think this is just looping in the
Perfect.
background
Which is even better. He's
Yeah.
just trapped in that moment endlessly.
forever. He likes it though, so it's fine.
Yeah.
How's it going, everyone? We hope you're having a wonderful Friday evening. It's book club time, and if you I see a lot of familiar names, of course, our usual book clubbers. But if you happen to be just stumbling upon this on YouTube, hello. That was a fake Matt. This is the real Matt, and I've been fake the whole time.
It's hard to tell.
But this is Doof Media. We are Doof Media, and we make podcasts and to talk all about the stories that we love. We also do this book club where every month, well, Matt, you can do that part. You can explain what a book club is. Why don't you do that?
Yeah. Each month, Scott and I select 5 books from a pool submitted to us by our wonderful Doof community. We put up a poll for all of our supporters on Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia and let them vote on which book they'd like us to talk about. The book with the most votes wins, and then we all read it.
Well, we usually do that, but this past month, we did our semi-annual We Pick 'em, where we take control and we do the books ourselves. And Matt, you selected this month's book, so there was no democracy here whatsoever. It was just you and your ways of deciding which of us get to live and die.
Yep.
So yeah, so we will get into that book in just a second. Before we do that, we have to do our live vote for next month's book. So I have just posted in the chat, if you're listening, a poll for what we're going to be covering next month. There are 5 books in the list. You can vote for 2 of them, and we will add these votes to the total from our Patreon vote, and we will use that to decide what we're covering next month. All right, Matt,
Yep.
We're ready. What book did you choose for us to talk about this month?
The book that I chose was Permutation City by Greg Egan. The story was the story of a man with a vision. Immortality, for those who can afford it, is found in cyberspace. Permutation City is the tale of a man with a vision. Wait,
I've said that multiple times. This is great.
it just says it over and over.
Yeah.
It's very confusing. Encompassing the lives and struggle of an artificial life junkie desperate to save her dying mother, a billionaire banker scarred by a terrible crime, the lovers for whom in their timeless virtual world love is not enough, and much more. Permutation City is filled with the sense of wonder.
This is the most damning with faint praise summary I've ever seen.
Yeah.
All right, Permutation City. Matt, what did you think of it? This was one that you hadn't read, right? That's why you picked it.
I hadn't read it. I've always heard about it.
And
I've
sorry,
been
before
on-
you get into it, I just folks listening at home, I also want to hear what you thought of it. And we'll get
Yeah.
into that as Matt explains it. We'll give y'all time to tell us what you thought. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I also, it's a hard sci-fi book. It's a Greg Egan story. He's really, I think deservedly popular for having books that just blow your mind with some really kind of wild conceptual idea and having a reasonably fun story around it. I think this book probably worked a bit better on me than it did on you because for me, the ideas are fun. I think just because of osmosis, I was probably basically familiar with most of the ideas already, but not all of them. And I thought in many places it did a good job of surprising me with the direction it ended up going. And I kind of, it's one of those books where I hope most of this conversation is just about the ideas and how kind of thought provoking it is. Yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit overall.
Yeah.
What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I think the conversation has to be about the ideas and not the story or characters because, not too much to talk about there. No, I think so. I think my the way to get into how I thought about this book is predicated on a question I need you to answer for me.
Uh-huh.
Is this supposed to be a horror novel?
So I'm not sure if it's supposed. I'm genuinely not sure if it's supposed to be a horror novel. I feel like it actually is supposed to be disconcerting.
Okay.
I think the notion of well, one sign of like the kind of book that this is that I forget everyone's names, which I think you did too. But who's our main guy? Who is the guy who constructs the city?
It's Jeff, the city guy.
Jeff.
I actually
Jeff,
don't remember
guy.
his name at all.
I don't either. Paul Durham. Okay.
Yeah, there we
Paul
go.
Durham. Like if you think about his life is like entirely a horror story. Like because he has gone through, essentially by the time we meet him, he has gone through 23 instances of like some horrible nightmare scenario, like being trapped in a computer by himself and then told like, you know what, this isn't working out, I'm just going to shut you down and then you're going to die, and then being shut down and then waking up and realizing, oh no, that's not what happened. We actually decided to resynchronize your memories with Paul Durham and then wake you up, or waking up in a mental institution and being told you were just crazy, those are false memories. And then like we don't even see the other 21 times this happened.
Yeah.
But basically like that's been his entire life. And then his life in a sense ends with him killing himself in a bathtub. So it's just like a man who has been driven totally mad and broken by these ideas.
Yeah.
So that the fact that he eviscerates himself with like a knife, I feel is meant to come off as horrifying.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think everything that happens in this book is absolutely horrifying. For every single character, every result, every single one of them mortifies me to my core as the person I am, and the person and the way I view existence and what it means to be a conscious living being. I found all this absolutely mortifying, and I mean, I think that's fun. It's fun to talk about that. I think overall, and I'm seeing a lot of people in the comments saying similar things, like that this was a fairly easy book to read. I basically read it in 2 bursts. Got like halfway through on my first day, and then literally Thursday afternoon while at work, I was like, man, I gotta finish this fucking book if I'm gonna finish it in time. So I just read it in one quick burst in the afternoon. It's very easy to read. It's very quick. Like a lot of the hard sci-fi books that we've covered in book club in the past, I found that it's clear the authors really just wanted to talk about these ideas and needed to put the shell and frame of a story and characters around them in order to really dive into those ideas. And so those are the things I most look for in my stories, and those are the things I found lacking in this story. Didn't really care too much about any of the people. There's one exception to that, and I'm curious if you can guess which character it is, because this thing happened last week where I started reading this book and quickly realized this was the most Matt book that's ever booked in the history of books. And I said that in our Discord, and the response was, "What's a Scott book?" And I was like, I don't know. And I struggled to identify my brand. So I'm out there in the universe right now trying to find what my brand is, and I'm wondering if you could help me define that by guessing correctly which of this host of characters I found the most compelling and interesting. So let's see if we can do this together.
Thomas Riemann was the one that you found the most interesting and compelling.
I'm so proud of you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, that is correct.
Wasn't even. I was. What you saw me doing was trying to Google the name of the guy who murdered his girlfriend because I couldn't remember his name. But I mean, that's who I wanted to talk about, by the way, because I feel like obviously the book is crammed with ideas. It's crammed with like all the different stuff you can do with this. But that through line, I just found like horrible and beautiful and touching and human and a nightmare, and like just it was great. I love that bit so much.
Yeah. One thing I wanted, before we get into Thomas, I did want to mention something that people are saying in the chat, which is that I think an experience that you had, apparently the audiobook of this novel is just the worst, the absolute worst.
Yeah, I mean the guy has this really annoying cadence that he reads in constantly. Like it's just the way he talks. It's like it's like a toneless sort of na 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 constantly for hours and hours and hours. And then when he does accents, they're bad accents, and you know there's no real attempt. Like you're not wrong that the book is sort of dramatically flat, but just add to that the audiobook reader isn't doing any actual work to like dramatize the performance.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like they try to do some bad accents. That's what John is saying, that Thomas had a bad German accent, which I think would absolutely kill the character for me. So I'm glad I read the book, not listened to the book.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't talk much, but
yeah. All right, let's talk about Thomas. So yeah, I mean, like, what I'll say here in the entrance to our talk about Thomas, and then maybe the talk about the book as a whole, is I was kind of really into it in the first half. I thought the ideas were compelling. I thought it was setting up an interesting thing. I was noticing some things that weren't tying into what we believed, like we're supposed to be in 2045. And we know that Durham is doing these tests on his copy in 2045. And then later in the book, we're told, oh, this guy Durham was in a mental institution in 2045. And that's like a head scratching, like, huh. The timeline is not lining up here, actually. And then there was a moment with Thomas, like when we basically dive into Thomas the night that he kills the woman he was with. And like up until that point, the book had made a really big deal of the fact that on his escape out the window that night, he had cut his hand. And then when we're replaying his escape, the book like makes special point to notice he expected this drain pipe to be very sharp, but it was smooth and didn't cut him at all. And I was like, whoa, wait, what? And I found that stuff compelling, and I found like the general question of what's going on here, what are we doing, what is the point of this stuff compelling. And then the reveal of what was going on happened almost like right after the halfway point of the book. And I don't know if a book has ever lost me as dramatically as that moment and through the end of the book. It just kind of like I was like, huh, okay, that's interesting. And then in a lot of ways I just stopped caring about any of the characters at that point. With the exception of our boy Thomas. But yeah, the book really, really lost me in the second half.
I think I had a similar reaction. I actually wonder if it's if we probably had that reaction for sort of overlapping but slightly distinct reasons.
Sure.
Because I mean, I think the reason that we share is probably that we suddenly move into a realm of like, oh, consequences don't matter anymore. You can do anything. You can, like, there's cause and effect barely even applies anymore, and thus how can you really tell a meaningful story? I was still entertained by a lot of stuff that happened. Basically,
sure,
the second half of the book is about this autoverse thing, which in the first half of the book is almost like a curiosity or like a distraction more than anything else. And then it becomes the conflict of the second half of the book, right?
Yeah.
The autoverse thing, I don't want to go into a whole tangent about the autoverse right now, but like I find that to be a very fun idea. The idea of cellular automata being used to, simulate life and do experiments with life. I've always thought that was cool. I've always thought artificial life was a cool concept. And
Yeah.
it's fun.
I
think,
liked it. I just want to say, like, I think the book's explanation for why it slammed the idea of Permutation City and the idea of the Audioverse and this thing, I felt was a little clunky. Like, I think the explanation that we're basically told is that Durham wants to build this world and he wants, like, the people to have some fun things to explore and learn about, and so he's gonna have Maria build this thing for him. And I just was like, I guess I was like, people always want first contact with aliens, so we're just going to build the aliens. I was like, okay. I feel like he had these two different ideas and he wanted to smash them together, and that's like the best he could come up with there. Which, I mean, it works, I guess, but I didn't love it.
Oh, I mean, I think the biggest sort of like valid nitpick that I could throw there is just like, he absolutely did not need her to be involved.
Sure.
He could have waited until they had started Permutation City, and then he could have done that himself. And you could say, well, she's better at it. It's like, no, he would have had infinite time. He would have figured it out.
Yeah, I mean,
so,
I also felt it was a little like pushes the suspension of disbelief that like there's these group of nerds that have been trying to crack this, like, how do we make intelligent design, or not intelligent, how do we make natural selection function in this autoverse. She finally cracks it, and then we move from her cracking it to, and now I'm constructing this life, and like it feels like it escalates beyond that, like very, very, very quickly. And sometimes that's how progress works, but I don't know, it just was a little pushed it beyond the suspension of disbelief for me.
Sure, yeah, there was a lot of stuff that I didn't really hold it against the book too much, but there was a lot that was like prescient, and then there was a lot that was kind of like quaint in its because this book was from 1994.
Yeah.
And he's writing about basically bidding for time on cloud compute servers.
Yeah.
In 1994. Like, that's incredible, actually. Like that like the whole thing with her like literally bidding for time so she can do her Autoverse experiments. That's just a thing that happened. That's just that's real. That's very cool. But but then like some of his details about like I think Greg Egan, bless his heart, in 1994 did not understand like the levels of like magnitude of how much compute different things are gonna cost, or like the idea of like buying up all the compute in the world to run a weather simulation. It's just like, no, that's not a thing that. Like, what they would do is they would buy a smaller compute budget and then they would run it more slowly, right? Like, it's just kind of silly. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that strikes the modern ear as silly, but at the time was like, yes, in the brave future, these things will be possible. And it's like, yeah, it turns out that it's like possible, but you probably wouldn't do it because there's like cheaper ways of doing it. Sure. Anyway, this is not like interesting nitpicks. It's just kind of funny to look at a thing where a guy was like incredibly prescient and then notice the interesting ways in which his predictions were off base, because it's like, well, he did this well, like why didn't he get all the way there? And it's, again, it's not criticizing him, it's just kind of interesting to think about.
And like I think that's great, and I love a lot of that here. Where I struggle is I feel no attachment to any of it. I think that the biggest part that I realized that is like, it's near the end of the book. We're having this big meeting about first contact with this alien race. And then the book has Pierre kind of observing this, which is a character that I do not like at all. But I think I don't, you love him? Yeah.
No, I don't care about him. He's nothing.
Yeah. Okay, good. And then they basically say, like, it doesn't matter the outcome of this vote, because regardless of who gets their way, the people that don't get their way could just make it a complete copy of this entire universe and copy it over and then do it their way. And then I'm like, then what the fuck are we doing here? Like, what? Like, you've lost me then. Like, none of this actually means anything until the book decides that this actually means everything. I still don't really understand exactly like what the final what was happening in the final conflict. Like the Autoverse was changing the whatever computer verse thing. I get that, like I get the beat to beat of it, but I don't really understand like the why of it at all.
Yeah. Well, I'll take a stab at that, and people in the comments, people in the discussion can tell me if they had a different or possibly better idea. But essentially, it all gets back to dust theory as being the fundamental thing.
Sure.
Where it's like, if you start, this is I don't necessarily think this is true, okay? But the idea is like you start a computational process, and if you embed conscious observers in that process, then even if you terminate the computational process, then that the process will essentially continue by being just sort of like picking itself up out of the random chaos of just the thermal noise of the universe and distant supernovae and whatever. Sure. It doesn't actually have to be like, and it's just going to go on like that forever. And he sort of proves this to himself when he does those experiments at the beginning of the book, where he like pauses his consciousness for increasing durations and realizes like none of this has any effect on my perception of my own existence. And then he sort of also proves it to himself by just doing that several times in a row. So anyway, That being said, what the thing with the Autoverse is like, they're trying to explain to the Autoverse creatures like, okay, here's the nature of the universe is you guys are inside of a computational construct, which is built out of the random chaotic dust of noise of causality, basically. And the Autoverse creatures are like, that doesn't seem very plausible. I don't believe you. And then they're like, actually, we're going to impose our own view on how we came about, our own like coherent backward-looking narrative on how the Autoverse came into existence, which is incompatible with yours. And the consequence of that is basically to pull Permutation City into a different interpretation of reality, where no, actually the Autoverse isn't infinite, or the TEV or whatever, I forget the name of the computer. The computer isn't infinite, and Permutation City isn't infinite. Everything is finite because the Autoverse people have their own beliefs about cosmology and physics in the universe. And actually, Paul Durham, you're wrong, and the computational substrate and Permutation City and the Autoverse, there's a different origin than what you thought, and it's a finite universe, and it's not going to continue forever. And that's why Permutation City starts falling apart, is because they're basically, the Permutation City people and the Autoverse people are fighting over an interpretation of the universe that matches their observations. And effectively, the Autoverse people win, because we see how it ends.
Yeah, but this is the reason this can happen is just because dust, essentially, if you think it in the dust theory, or if you think it or compute it or believe it hard enough, it can become true, or it must be.
Yeah. Or like maybe both things are true, like maybe they're just the unlucky ones who woke up in the universe where it happened to be the case that the Autoverse people were right.
Yeah.
And there's another Permutation City that's going on where the Permutation City people were right. All of the above almost has to be true, because all of the possible permutations happen. That's why it's called Permutation City, I think. I mean, I think that the problem I had with dust theory, well, I have a lot of problems with dust theory, to be honest, which it's not like it makes it hard for me to enjoy the book, but it does put a damper on my ability to fully take it seriously. Because it, like, I can kind of go with you as far as if you had a simulation of a person, let's just stipulate that person is conscious inside the computer. Not saying, they're having a conversation about this in the chat, like, can you even simulate a consciousness?
Yeah, what is consciousness ultimately? Yeah.
And I don't know, and I don't think there's any way for us to find that out. but let's just stipulate that the consciousness in the computer is a consciousness for the sake of argument. I can go with you as far as like, yeah, if you pause the computation and then you resume it in 5 minutes, the person who's having that experience in the computer will not notice that happened at all. They'll have no awareness of it unless you tell them, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But then where I begin to lose them is when it's like, oh, actually, you can do these computations in any order. And it's like, no, you can't. Like because that's an experiment they do in the book. Like, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but that's one of the things they do in the book is they're like, we're going to calculate you saying 1, and then we're going to calculate you saying 3, and then we're going to calculate you saying 2. And it's like, that doesn't work.
Yeah, but then to copy Durham, he's still, in his mind, he's just counting 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
That's what he experiences. But I'm like, hold up. Like, that's not how that works. Like, the causal process that led from you saying 1 to you saying 3 has to lead through the details of the computation of you saying 2. You can't, like, it's not like it's a tape where you can play 1, 3, 2. You had to calculate 2 to get to 3. So you literally can't do them out of order. It makes no sense. And that was the first time that I was like, hold on a second. Like, these computations, like, we don't really know what they are is the thing. We don't, like, I've had arguments with people, like good friends who I think, like, I certainly don't have an explanation for how this works, but they offer the explanation of like, well, consciousness is just a computation. And I'm like, okay, philosophically speaking, what's a computation? And I never get what I feel is a satisfactory answer about that, because it's just like you've just moved the mystery to another ill-defined word, in my opinion. So I don't know. Thank you for letting me kind of rant on this for a second, but I'm just like, I don't think dust theory is true or correct. It's kind of it's a fun idea if you just kind of accept it and go with it. But I'm just like, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, like, ultimately, what one of this book is, I think, doing and challenging actually is the idea of what, how do we define consciousness, and like, what does it mean to be a copy? Like, this is a book that poses the question, like, do you want to live forever? And my answer is no, not like if it's like this, because that's not me. And like, I kind of, the one thing I appreciate most about the book is how it dives into this with Thomas and with Pierre, a character that, like I said, I don't care about at all. But like, it makes it very clear that the whoever the human being was that became Pierre, he's not that person, and hasn't been that person for a long time, and continues to not be that person. And this is not like the change of a human being over time, right? This is not like, well, we have experiences, and those experiences change us and push us in new ways. And this is just, I'm gonna rewrite myself to be this. I don't want to be this anymore. I want to be this. Like, and that is all simulated, right? This is the idea when we start talking about consciousness, and the question that John posed and the thing you were talking about is like, what is consciousness, and is a simulation of consciousness the same? And I mean, this gets into like, what is a soul, right? Like what is it about us that is there some part of us that is beyond just computational? And I mean, we don't have the answers to that question, but like, I feel like it is. I feel like that's true, and I don't think you have to like believe in God or a soul to think that. And just like this, like, I like that the book makes it very clear from the very beginning that the copies of people are not even like real copies, to the point where the software is running a human being down to the atomic level. They are facsimiles. They are like, I think the book calls it cheats, right? It's shortcuts. It's cheating. It's simulating a person. And using shortcuts to save space and time and all these things. And it's like, okay, so it's not a person anymore. But it's something. Like, I'm not saying like these things are not beings that deserve something, but it's not me. So like, ask me the question, when you die, do you want to get copied? My answer is no, because I don't think that's me anymore. And this gets back to like, we had this conversation, we talked about the Prestige. This is the Prestige all over again, Matt. This is, which me is me? Is it the me that falls into the tank and drowns every night, or is the me that gets copied over to complete the trick?
Yeah. I think there's a bunch of intuition pumps for this that are all disturbing, but like the prestige one is a good one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where like for me that one is horrible because like you have a strong intuition that you are in fact the one who drowns because
Yeah.
from your point of view you're standing in place and then you fall through a pit and you die. Whereas like being teleported away, that's a weird thing. Like that guy is a photocopy.
Yeah.
But he's the one who gets to live. And then a similar thing with the Star Trek transporter where you're being atomized and then a copy of you is being made elsewhere, and then you can be like, well, what if they're using the same atoms to rebuild you? I'm like, man, I don't know. I would feel real skeptical about getting in a Star Trek transporter for the same reasons I'd feel skeptical about getting prestiged. Although at least in the transporter, I wouldn't have to experience drowning to death or risk that at least.
Yeah, you would just cease to exist instantly. Yeah, neat.
But like in both of those cases, though, we at least have this idea of like it's a real atomic copy, and if you cut open the brain of the copy, it's like that's identical to Matt's brain down to the atom, right? That's the assumption of the way these things work. But when we start talking about computer uploading, it's like, hold on a sec. Like, we're running on quantum mechanics and like just a very specific kind of physics. Not even saying that I think, like, I'm not making the claim that like consciousness relies on quantum physics or like consciousness is magic or something. It's literally just like you're not actually making a copy; you're making an approximation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's just not me at all, right?
I believe we're going to get to a point where we're able to simulate consciousness. Like, I think we're going to get there, right? We're going to figure it out. We're smart people. We can figure this stuff out. We're going to be able to simulate this. But like, is that consciousness? Is that me? Is a copy? Is a simulation of me? That's not me. And I'm sure that you have your friends that believe this, and I'm sure there's plenty of other people believe this. No, if it's an identical, well, not even identical copy. If it's approximate enough that it is like, what's the difference between simulating consciousness and being conscious? And I can't answer that question except that it feels different to me. Yeah. Like, it just like, as I think John said, I have a gut feeling there's more to a soul than just calculations. I agree. I think whether we want to attach God to it or just some mysterious thing that we don't understand, I feel there's more to awareness and consciousness and existence than just numbers and calculation and these things. I feel that, and it is. Dust theory says if I feel that, then it must be true.
I think I'm generally more of a materialist than you, just relatively, but I also feel far from sure that consciousness comes along with the ride when you make even if it were like a atomically precise simulation of the person. Like even if you like simulated every quark in that person, if you take a gigantic Jupiter-sized computer to do this, right? But like even if you could do that, I don't necessarily think that like the experience of that thing is the same as the experience of the person. And it's a really weird thing because I've talked to people who are just like they basically just think I'm crazy when I say that, because they're like, okay, because it's not that. So they'll say stuff which is true, like, okay, do you agree that this copy would behave exactly the same way as you in all circumstances? And I'm like, yes. Do you believe that when I ask this copy about its experience of its own consciousness and perceptions and qualia, as we call it, like the experience of what it is to feel things, that it would answer those questions in exactly the same way? Yes, of course I believe that, because I believe it's made of particles and atoms and fields, just like me. And there's no place where like the soul pokes into the brain and is like, no, I actually feel something. It's like whatever the soul is, it's like it's in here. But for some reason that I always have a hard time explaining, that doesn't equate to me saying, therefore the thing in the computer that's saying that it has experiences is actually having experiences.
Yeah.
And I can even, like, the thing is, I'm like, even when I say that, I'm like, well, it's not lying. Like, it's reporting the same calculations that I'm reporting when I say that. I'm just like, okay, but it's literally not me. Like, it literally just isn't me. It's over there, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just very. I feel like this is just a domain where philosophy just has not quite cracked it yet, and it seems kind of intractable. I think it's very interesting, by the way. Like, this is just one of those topics that I kind of become a bore if it comes up in a social situation, because I'm just like, no one can answer this.
Yeah.
We know the conditions of 10 seconds after the Big Bang, but we don't know what consciousness is. Isn't that weird? You know?
Yeah, and to give the book credit, like, this is exactly what it's doing, right? Like, the book is not just, it's positing an explanation for this, but it's doing so in a way to challenge you on those things, right? Like I think Peer, as much as I think you could probably carve that whole thing, and I was waiting for that thing to, like, matter in some way beyond just, this is a vessel to introduce an idea, and it never does, which is why I don't really care for the character. But, like, this guy is not a human being, and like, in any way, shape, or form, and the type of existence that Peer lives, I guess we could call it that, is horrifying to me. Like, just absolutely horrifying. And like, I love that we get to see Kate. I think it's Kate. Is his girlfriend's name Kate? Yeah.
I believe so.
She is, like, equally horrified by it. She's like, what? No, that's awful. And yet, like, I feel like he kind of wins in the end, where they're just, like, together forever, isolated and alone. And I'm like, this cemented once again for me that I do not want to live forever. I do not want to live forever. What I want is more time than I have, right? That is what I want.
Right.
I do not want an eternity. No, thank you.
I honestly feel like one of the sort of horror subtexts of the ending of their story is, like, every version of those two that decides not to continue doesn't continue.
Yeah.
But there's always a version that does.
Yeah.
So they can never really die. Even if they decide to die, there's going to be some permutation that decides, we'll just try this other thing. And I wanted to bring up the chair leg thing, or it's a table leg or chair leg. I forget.
Yeah.
Table leg, because, like, I encountered that idea probably 25 years ago, as, like, practically that. I may be wrong, but I feel like that was the way that the idea of, like, a simulated person was introduced to me, was just like, well, if you simulated yourself, then obviously you could make all kinds of modifications, like making yourself, care about carving table legs for 50 subjective years and think that was amazing and get incredible satisfaction from every single table leg you carved, and just love the sensation of sanding wood and all of this. And, like,
that's not real.
like part of the horror of it is I think the fact, maybe you'll think I'm crazy, but there's an allure to this. Like, there's an allure to, like if you've ever enjoyed doing carpentry, right? You can be like, what if I could just do this forever, and never feel any diminution. Anyway, you know what I mean, of the pleasure of this.
Yeah.
And like, wouldn't that be nice? And, like, part of you feels like, yeah, that'd be nice. And then the rest of you is like,
no.
What about everything else that I care about? No.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, go ahead.
No, I love that Peer represents kind of the taking, like, what would you do if you could live forever? And the thing that us nerdy people that love art immediately say is, I would read every book. I would watch every movie. I would play every game. I would learn everything. And, like, Peer takes that and he forms into this grotesque forgery of enjoying things, which is you just rewrite your brain to make you enjoy the thing until you arbitrarily decide. Like, I think Kate, like I just agree with Kate so much in this, and just like why don't you just wait till you get bored of it and then figure out something else you want to do? And it's like, no, that's not acceptable for him. He has to continually rewrite his brain to get maximal enjoyment out of this stuff. It's like, that's not living. That's not anything. That's fake. And it horrifies me.
I had, so this was more of just like my extra textual musings, but I was like, I thought it was kind of interesting that all of the stuff that he did pretty much was like not what I would think of as a creative art. Like even making table legs, it is more of a craft in the way that he was approaching it, because it's not like he was trying to make like some weird table leg that expressed his soul. He's just like getting really, really, really good at making table legs. And then the other things that he did, like the next thing he was gonna do was gonna be like cataloging beetles.
Yeah.
And previous things that he had done were just like understanding physics and whatever. And it's like, yeah, I'd probably, if I were in his situation, I'd probably want to understand physics. That's fine. I don't object to that. But I was like, I feel pretty sure that if I were in a situation where I was just like trapped with eternity and I had to make the best of it, I could get almost like arbitrarily long levels of enjoyment out of like writing or even like painting, where it's like there's not like a ceiling on what you can do with writing stories, right? You can just keep writing stories and as you write that story, and then that gives you an idea for the next story, and then maybe you go have a new experience, and then that gives you an idea for a new story. Like I actually can't imagine ever just like running out of things to write about. Whereas I definitely can imagine like getting bored of cataloging beetles, you know?
But
I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, but this is eternity though. Like this is that we are so bad at actually conceptualizing what forever means, because it does not exist for us. Like, you say, like, I would never get bored of writing stories. It's like you could write every single combination of every single word ever written, and you would still have infinity more time. Like, this is like eternity is is beyond any of us.
Yeah, I think the one problem with the specific scenario in this story is that they all have like these incredibly good, essentially perfect memories.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why would you want that? I mean, if you have like a 150-year rolling memory, you're good, because you won't remember.
But that's essentially what Pierre is doing. He's just doing it like manually instead of just.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's interesting. Like this is a bit of a reach, but I was reading about Conway's Game of Life this week, because it's kind of obvious that Egan was inspired by Conway's Game of Life. And for those who may not know, Conway's Game of Life is like a really, really simple cellular automata rule set. There's like 4 rules, and it's on a 2D grid, and it's like, when there's cells that are populated in this pattern, then a new one is spawned here, and then these 3 die, and then and it just turns out that with this simple rule set, you can get these really complex behaviors, like these sort of what you could call creatures, very loosely speaking, where there's like a little arrangement that just like animates itself, and it just like continues moving to the left forever unless it hits something. Or just like some pattern that just endlessly repeats. And I was kind of thinking, like, humans are sort of like, if you run a human forever, it sort of becomes a cellular automata that just repeats, actually.
Sure.
Sort of like these Game of Life creatures. Basically, like you said, like I strongly feel that I would just like, I already repeat myself on the scale of like a few weeks,
Yeah.
I would just become like a wave, like a standing wave of a being that just kind of repeats itself forever.
We have lived 40 years.
Yeah.
Imagine 1 billion years. And as Aqua is saying in the chat, like that line in the book near the end of, it was early still as it always would be, like in the city, right? It's like, we cannot contemplate. I like what John is saying, that like the if you were stuck inside eternity, like truly stuck inside eternity, then you would probably just like, the problem is when we talk about forever, we talk about it conceptually and start thinking about what it would be like to live for infinity years. But really what living is just like waking up and like doing something and then going to bed.
Yeah.
And like we string those days together like crazy. Like you and I were talking about how quickly the weeks go when you're doing similar things. And like, yeah, that's just like, would you even conceptually be aware of that much passage of time if you're just living day to day linearly? Yeah. I don't, who the fuck knows? We'll never know.
Yeah. I feel like this is an opportunity for us to go back to Thomas because we didn't quite.
Yeah. We never actually hit that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, go. Let's talk about Thomas.
just like out of, he was doing a different thing with his eternity, right? Which is, and here's my interpretation is like, and I think the book like is very cheeky about this. Is he essentially dies and goes to hell?
Yeah,
that's what this book is. He dies and goes to hell, and hell is him torturing himself with the guilt over this crime, this sin that he committed, that he cannot forgive himself for, and he is trying everything that he can to like he tries so many different things. He's like, maybe if I just like torture myself with it enough times over and over, then like something in me will change, and I will have suffered enough.
Mm-hmm.
I will have suffered enough that I can feel that I've been absolved of this.
Yeah.
Or like, but like he refuses to just like reach in and like erase it though, right? Because he could do that, but he refuses to do it because he does actually regret it, and like he like robustly regret it. Like that's kind of why we like him. Actually, I think I really love this.
He's the most human of anyone.
Yes.
In this book. Yeah.
Exactly. He's like, for all that he's actually a murderer, he is the guy who we want to see him redeemed because he so desperately regrets this thing that he did, and he would do anything to undo it. And that's kind of like the beautiful poignancy of the end. Is it's not entirely clear to me exactly what happens and exactly what he does, or even if he does anything at all on purpose. Maybe it's just a thing that happens to him in the course of the of the autoverse unraveling, or maybe it's just divine intervention. Who knows? But somehow, on some level of the simulation, he makes a different choice, and then he lives out that life, and he actually, he gets his redemption, and he pays the price for it. But I mean, that's my interpretation of what happened there. Maybe you have a different interpretation.
I don't understand what happened at the end. Like, I mean, we definitely see the moment where he does call the police and like do everything he always wanted to do, and the book gives him that. But I'm unclear on what happened with the desperately trying to pull his body out of his pyramid and why it couldn't leave, and I don't understand that at all.
I totally don't understand that part either. I mean, I was kind of just like, he has left the building. Like, he is no longer here.
Yeah.
He has escaped into his own something. What it is exactly, is it another sort of like dust instantiated universe where he made a different choice? I mean, if you believe Paul Durham, then like even the universe in which he lived his entire actual life was a dust instantiated universe in the first place. And in fact, if you take the idea of dust theory seriously, everything is a dust universe, including this one that we're in right now.
No, I think you're right. I mean, I think because, according to the rules of the book, because he managed to simulate a version of the events in which he made a different choice, that version of events exists, as you said. Like that is now a universe has been unfolded in which Thomas called the police, took his medicine, took responsibility, and maybe we'll find some measure of peace. Of course, if dust theory is correct, that's one of infinite universes in which he's also continuously suffering. But we don't have to think about that because that's we experience time and linearly and existence on one plane, and so that is a different permutation. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, that is the permutation in which Alex is not guilt-ridden, or Thomas is not guilt-ridden, and that's the one I choose to believe in.
Yeah, I mean, some piece of him went to hell or purgatory. I think purgatory is actually a better metaphor than hell, honestly. I mean, I because that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to purge himself of this regret and find redemption, and he does. He figures it out.
So I have a question for you. Do you? So you mentioned in that summary that like how this was set up in the first place. Like what we see in the book is that Thomas changes his mind, decides he's going to send a copy into this whole thing, but he wants to see if this version of him would possibly, if he had made another choice at his death of reconciling with his guilt, if that would have brought about change. So he runs a horribly cruel simulation in which he forces himself to do that, and then it doesn't work, and he sends that. Does he send himself to purgatory, I guess is the question, or is that just something that his subconscious creates for himself in his own instance of purgatory of Permutation City?
Gosh, I don't know that I remember that specific detail of the story well enough to answer. I just feel like that. I feel like I'm off base even in saying this, but like I feel like my reading of that was just another instance of him desperately trying to absolve himself of this guilt, or like figure out some way that he can not have this like weight bearing down on him anymore. Just trying anything he can possibly try, and like that also didn't work, just like everything else doesn't work. So I don't know. I feel like what do you think? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't prescribe any like conscious intent to Thomas there. I think it's just like this is kind of like what guilt looks like when you allow it to fester for 7,000 years. And that's the thing when we talk about eternity and living forever. It's like we have to you live with all things. Everything you've done, the good and the bad.
I one thing I liked, by the way, was like I think maybe a second ago I said something like he chooses not to, erase this guilt from his mind with simulation brain surgery, and the book addresses this where he's like, I would just not be me anymore if I did that, because my whole life since I was like 25 or whatever has been completely conditioned on this horrible mistake that I made. And even if I were to like erase my memory of it, I would then just like look back over my life and it wouldn't make any sense. I would be like, well, like my own life wouldn't make sense to me without this. So I would effectively be killing myself even if I erase this thing that I hate that I did and that I strongly regret, which is great. And I think very funny when you contrast it with Peer, because Peer wouldn't hesitate, right? Peer would just like, I feel slightly uncomfortable, I'm erasing that. And does it make me an entirely new person? Sure, but I'm not the person I was 5 minutes ago already. So just no sense of continuity, or like really incapable of feeling anything like guilt, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it is a question of continuity of consciousness, because you're right. Like, I mean, the argument that we are changing constantly every moment that we are alive is true. And some people take that idea, like some people like Pierre take that idea that says it doesn't matter what's the difference between waking up one day and saying, I feel like I'm a bad person, I'm going to do the work to change myself, to make myself different, to make myself better, and someone hacking their brain or just going into a computer program and saying, I wish I was more confident. Like, obviously one of the differences is the work required, right? One like it's hard for a living person to change who they are, to try to improve themselves. and we place value in that struggle, in a way that makes a lot of sense, because like that's our only choice, and so it makes sense that we culturally in society place value in the struggle of trying to improve yourself. But that's only because, like I said, we don't have the choice. So like there's an argument to be made of like someone's trying to continuously improve, but they have the means to do so via just typing some words into a computer. Like, should that not also be valued in some way? I don't know. I find it horrifying and disturbing, but I'm conditioned by the world that I live in.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know. I don't know the answers to any of these questions.
I feel slightly. I guess that's just one of the fun things about this book is our conversation has moved from the concept of struggling with eternity to the concept of like self-modification, and both of these things exist within the same story in a way that feels very organic and fun. I think I may be less opposed to the idea of self-modification, but I guess that's a funny one too, because like as I've gotten older, I've been less enthusiastic about that one too. Like when I was young, and part of this might just be that like the future seemed so very far away, that I was like, hell yeah, throw away this meat sack and just put me in a cyber body. And I've become very sentimental about the meat sack over time.
It's you.
Yeah. I do feel like getting suicidally bored after only 7,000 years is a skill issue, but I acknowledge that there is a limit to that.
You say only 7,000 years. Like, Matt, do you know how long 7,000 years is?
That's only 70 lifetimes. Stephen King isn't even slowing down. Think about how many lifetimes you could spend just writing books before you get bored of writing books. Well, imagine if Stephen King was in there after 7,000 years. You think he'd be done writing? No. He'd still be writing. He would have written 30,000 books by now.
I think he would have gotten bored. I don't know.
I don't think so. I'm gonna ask him. But like I did one just little beat I liked was like they were talking about the idea that the Elysians or whatever they're called, a lot of them were just being like, I'm getting it feels like not a lot's happening, so I'm just gonna like shut myself down for 10 years and then stuff will have happened in the world, and then when I wake up I'll have to like catch up on it, and that'll be exciting and interesting. And people already being like, okay, but you can't just like, then everybody's going to start doing that. And then the world is just going to be all of us going to sleep and then waking up in 10 years and nothing will have happened because we were all asleep.
Yes.
Like, and then you still have eternity left. So,
yeah. I don't want to live forever.
I still do, but you know,
if I had to pick like a number of years, I mean, obviously, like, I don't know. I think I could do 7,000.
I think the thing about it that like all of these people are very weird. I feel like other people is what would make eternity tolerable.
Sure.
Yeah,
like I mean, we haven't mentioned the fact that the Permutation City is just a bunch of rich billionaire assholes.
Yeah, actually, that was one thing you and I were both kind of confused about. Like, how are there thousands of people in Permutation City?
I think so. There is like a thing at the very end of the book that says like, oh, if you get lonely, just like you can just make new. I think they're just like you just make new people because there's generations, right? So I think they just like have children, sort of. I think.
Yeah, Aqualungfish says they created children.
But are they completely simulated people, or are they just like like is it just like I'm taking the copies of two copies and then like merging them? Oh, Jesus Christ.
I mean, I feel like if it was like it actually matters to me, honestly. Like if you can literally make a baby and raise the baby and it's a person in the Permutation City.
Define person.
Like that's just well, it's indistinguishable from a person. Let's just put it that way. Again, we have to set aside the question of like, is it really consciousness, or there is no like there's just no answer to that. So let's just say it's indistinguishable from a person, and that like whatever, can't get bogged down in that. It's not that it's not a pertinent question, it's that it doesn't go anywhere. Okay,
Sure.
so the like then if you can be in relation to other people, like that just strikes me as like an endlessly rewarding mode of existence. Like even if you do repeat the same, like you know, you and me and our friend hung out a few weeks ago. I'm sure we like repeated the same behavioral patterns that we've done 1,000 times before. That doesn't mean I'm like bored of it. It's like, no, that's the substance of life is repeating the same patterns with your friends. That's what hanging out is, right?
Yeah, like
So
like 40 times, not like infinity times.
I could do it infinity times.
My head hurts.
It's kind of funny because the literal promised reward of like most major religions is eternal life.
Yeah.
Except Buddhism, where the promised reward, ironically, is an end to the repeated cycle of eternal life, and you get to just cease to exist, and that's your gift, which is pretty interesting in light of like seriously thinking about the implications of eternity, like you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, the older I get, the more I think that if there is such a thing as heaven, that it is not like, you know, I think when you're a kid and you're Catholic and you're being described what heaven is, you're imagining basically Permutation City, like a magical city in the clouds where you just live forever in happiness, right? But if something like heaven exists, I think it's more of, it's more abstract and non like set in reality and real type thing. I think it's just like when you read in the Bible when they talk about heaven, it's just like you're just with God. You're just with God. And what does that mean, with God? It's like I'm energy. I'm coming home, right? I'm rejoining with my maker. I don't know. I have no idea. But
yeah,
I don't want to live forever. I don't, if heaven is what I thought, what 8-year-old Catholic Scott thought heaven was, then I don't want to go there.
So, okay, one sort of last thought from me on this, because we could just go on like this all night, but
Sure.
like it's very easy for me to imagine a way where like I could describe a series of changes that I could make to your brain or mind or whatever, where you would just be okay with it. And it wouldn't even have to be that severe. And it wouldn't like lobotomize you or particularly make you a different person, except in the specific regard that just like you just wouldn't get bored. And that doesn't mean you would be making the same table leg over and over for 50 years. I'm not saying you wouldn't get bored about like proximate things, but you wouldn't get like existentially bored. Like it just seems very easy for me to imagine that that's an easy change that you could make, so that after 7,000 years you're not just like, oh, I'm crushed by the weight of my memories, and it's just like, well, just don't be like that. That's one thing I was thinking about while I was reading, is like, well, just like make yourself not be crushed by that, and then you're fine. Like just like take that out and just keep doing stuff and hanging out. Like I think part of this is just like my disposition is there's always 10,000 things that I want to be doing at any given moment, and I am like constantly doing things.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but Matt, eventually you'd run out of things to do. And I'm like, I kind of just deeply am like, no, I wouldn't, because I get joy out of the stupidest shit, actually. So there's no reason to think that I wouldn't get bored out of doing something for the 10th time, like knowing that I had done it 10 times before. Like just this, it's just a matter of like disposition fundamentally. And
Yeah,
I'm not even saying like you're wrong. I'm just saying like I think that it's possible to be okay with it, is maybe the claim.
If we're talking 10,000 years, if we're talking 20,000 years, if we're talking 100,000 years, sure. But that's not the scale on which we're operating here. We're operating on forever.
Yeah. I don't know. So like, okay, actual last thing is just like I don't know that like I don't know that I would care. Like if it's the year 80 million and I'm like solving a Sudoku or something, like I don't think I would care that I had already solved that Sudoku. It just wouldn't. It's like, yeah, whatever, you know. I'll read the same book 3 times and I've only been alive for 40 years, right?
Okay, but
So
what
I
if you
can
read the same book 300 trillion times? These are orders of magnitude different.
But that's still kind of my point. Is just like the enjoyment. Like enjoyment for me is not a function of novelty. It's not that novelty has no bearing on it, but I clearly don't need that much novelty if I can enjoy reading the same book multiple times.
I don't think, Alex, I don't think you'd see something different in every time if you read it 300 trillion times. I don't. There's a limit.
How many podcasts do you think you and I could do on the same book? I think probably at least 1 trillion.
No, absolutely not.
Combinatorially speaking, we could have that many different unique conversations.
Yeah. I mean, this is, it sounds nightmarish to me. It just does. No, thank you. I think part of the sweetness and the joy of this whole experience is that it is transitive. It is going to end eventually. And like I said, I am a person that fears death very acutely. I don't want to die, and I would like to live for as long as I possibly can, but forever is not something I want to fuck with.
Yeah, I think probably the most horror element of the story to me is the one where it just kind of merges with quantum immortality. Like, have you heard the concept of quantum immortality?
Mm-mm.
Basically, it's just like it's basically just dust theory, except a little bit more like constrained, where it's like if something happens that would kill you, then your consciousness, because like the sort of pop psychology, the sort of pop physics way of talking about quantum physics is like anytime there's like a quantum event, the universe splits in two, and this happens, basically infinite times every instant, essentially. So if you were in an accident that should have killed you, then your consciousness just goes into the branch where you didn't die. But then this just is endlessly true. So like every opportunity that you have to die, like, oh, look, they just discovered the cure for that just before you died. And then as you're about to grow old and die, oh, look, they just discovered the cure for aging. And because, like, quantum probability wise, I don't think that's true either, for similar reasons to why I don't think dust theory is true.
Uh-huh.
But this is another like popular, meme.
I mean, the truth of that is like, and the truth of all this is like the idea of like, I am horrified by the idea of rewriting my brain conceptually, but like if it were true, I obviously wouldn't be horrified by it, because the version of me that would be horrified by it would cease to exist. This is just like we fear death from the outside. If there's nothing after death, there's no one there to fear anything, right? So like the actual experience of all this stuff is not anything I ever have to actually worry about fearing, like experiencing, right? Like it's the same with the transporter, like to whatever conscious version of it, like whatever me is reconstituted at the end of that transporter, they don't care. And the me that ceases to exist doesn't exist anymore. So like the actual experience of it is meaningless. It's just the conceptual idea of it that I find so horrifying.
Yeah, I agree. And I also, this isn't very like scientific of me, but I sort of have no faith that we will ever figure this out.
I don't know how we could. Like, I mean, we joke about this whole dust theory stuff, and the joke in the book is that like it's unverifiable. Like you verify it by dying
Yeah.
in that
Right.
universe. Therefore, you can never show your results to anyone and say, "See." Yeah.
Exactly right. Like I know I hate saying it because I feel like the guy who said that human flight would be impossible for at least 1,000,000 years, and literally 2 weeks before he said that, the Wright brothers had made their first flight in Kitty Hawk, or whatever the story was. It's something like that. Um, every time I say something is impossible, I feel like I'm going to be that guy. But I don't see how you prove anything about consciousness through anything that looks like materialism. Like it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know.
I agree.
These are my opinions.
So ultimately, I liked this book allowed us to have this conversation, even though this conversation hurt my brain and frustrated and scared me all at the same time. But it is cool that stories can bring out these kind of things. I don't know if I think this particular story in and of itself was that narratively compelling.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
good talk.
I agree. Yep. I think Greg Egan is great for ideas, and he is definitely a hard sci-fi writer when it comes to characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but of course, as we all know, there's a version of the universe in which everyone experiencing this right now loved the book and think it's their favorite book ever.
Yeah. There's a version where you loved it and I didn't like it very much.
Yeah.
So,
I don't like that one.
well,
I don't live there.
Well,
I don't need.
sorry.
I don't want to be a jerk, but all this is completely irrelevant because I experience everything linearly, and none of this matters. And I'm just gonna carry on living my life.
there you go. Yep. It's very freeing. It's actually very freeing being a linear being because you don't have to care about that. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, sweet. All right. Let's go ahead and lock down next month's book. So I posted the link a couple of minutes ago. I'm going to refresh one last time. This is your last chance, everyone. Last chance. Well, it looks like it's not going to matter. So let me refresh 1, 2, 3 more times. All right. So by a margin of 2 votes, next month we'll be reading Red Rising by Pierce Brown. Matt, I've heard so many people talk about how this is just a great, wonderful book, and I've never read it. And then I've also heard my sister who said, "Why did you put that book on your vote? I hate that book. That's a terrible book." So
Great. Cool.
I guess we'll find out in a month. I don't know. I'm trying to look at times as far as when we would do this. We're like a couple weeks late from when we normally have book club. So let's give 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, and come back on the 7th of November. Let's do that.
All right. Sounds good.
I would love to get my sister on here. Maybe I'll see if she can make a guest appearance. I mean, she lives very far away from me and doesn't have a microphone, but we'll see what we can do.
Yeah. She was on the first book club.
The very first book club, yeah, when we talked about wool.
I believe that like my microphone just literally didn't work back then. So that was a rough one.
Remember the solid year where you were just using the microphone on the earpods that came with your phone, and every time you moved, it scratched on your shirt? You remember that?
It's hard to believe, but we really weren't that serious about this back then.
Simple beginnings.
Yeah, I do.
So actually, I went back and listened to an old episode, and I not only obviously my mic is better, I think my voice has changed, and I did not realize it until it's not just like I'm not just talking about like tone or cadence or like energy or monotoneness or any. I literally think my voice has changed. I listened to an earlier episode and I was just like, I don't talk like that anymore. That is not what my voice sounds like anymore, and that was weird. Because I mean, your voice does change, right? Like it does over time. Your voice changes.
Yeah.
But it's weird experiencing it firsthand.
It is weird. I was thinking the other day about how, like, at no point during the decade of your 30s do you feel like you're changing, but then you look at a picture of what you looked at that looked like when you were 30, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's just life. You know, that's like, that's what our parents always used to say to us is like, you don't feel old. You're like, you're right.
Yeah.
I feel like the exact same person except for the heartburn.
Yeah. And you'll continue to feel like that person for 10,000 years, Scott.
Yep. Stop it, John. Stop it. All of you. It's mean and you're hurting me. Let's wrap it up. Thank you all so much for hanging out. This was a great talk. I appreciate you all participating in it. I think we all got our heads hurt today, but none more than me, because Matt stubbornly refused to admit that eternity is terrifying.
Well, we'll see, Scott. We'll just have to see. Maybe you'll get the last laugh after all. Anyway, if you like what we do here at Doof Media and you want to see more of it, then please head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia and consider donating to support our organization. At any available level, you'll get access to the vote for the books that we talk about each month, as well as a bunch of other exclusive features, like the ability to vote in our doofmovies.com movie ranking website that lets you decide what movies we cover over on the Doofcast.
And if you happen to have just stumbled upon this via the YouTube algorithms, we suggest, if you liked this conversation, please check out our other shows. Check out one of the podcasts we're doing right now is called Flanagan's Wake. We are going through the works of Mike Flanagan in chronological order, diving into them deep, talking about them, discussing them. I think if you enjoyed this, you will enjoy that as well. We just finished, I say just finished. I feel like we're about to start Bly Manor, but for the people listening, we still have a week of Henry James, but we've already recorded that episode, and I'm already planning the Bly Manor episode, so it's weird. But we're about to start Mike Flanagan's The Haunting of Bly Manor. We just finished talking about Henry James's short stories to kind of prepare for that. So please check that out.
Yeah.
Alex is ready for more too. There will be more too. Probably not this week. We usually record on Sunday nights, and that is not available for us this weekend. But there will be more too soon.
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 Yes.
Soon. That is our bonus podcast. All right, Matt.
Yeah.
That's it. We did it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's right. I'm gonna go euthanize that clone.
What?
Thanks, everybody.
Oh God. The cool thing about this is, once I turn this stream off, you cease to exist.